Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And let's open it. And we are starting a new chapter. Vayisa Yaakov einav. Jacob lifted up his eyes, Vayar, and he saw, Vehine Esav ba, and behold, Esau coming. Ve'imo, and with him, with Esau, Arba Me'ot Ish, 400 men. So if you were Jacob and you realized that you were going to have to encounter the brother who wanted to kill you 20 years before, and he was coming with 400 men, ask yourself, what do you think he's going? You think he's planning a company picnic? So, of course, Jacob was not raised as a stupid, and he's now going to have to do something about it, right? He's just come from having wrestled with the angel. He is limping, and he now sees Esau coming with 400 men. Vayachatz et hayeladim al Leah va'al Rachel va'al shtei hashvachot. And he divided up the children. Al Leah, al usually means on, it's a preposition, but here we'd have to say together with Leah, right? He divided up the children, or Leah's children, and Rachel, and with Rachel, of course, there was just one child here, Va'al shtei hashvachot, and the two handmaidens, onwards. Vayasim et hashvachot ve'et yaldehen rishona, and he placed the handmaids and their children first. Ve'et Leah v'yeladeha acharonim, and Leah and her children after them. Ve'et Rachel ve'et Yosef acharonim, and Rachel and Joseph behind them. So again, why is the Torah giving us such detail, right? So Rashi pulls it out. Ve'et Leah v'yeladeha acharonim, and Leah and her children behind them or after them. And there's a principle, I actually learned this from my mother of blessed memory, acharon chaviv. The last one is the most precious. You save the best for last. And what it's doing is Rashi's telling us that the Torah is giving us a sense of how Jacob felt about them. And of course, what is happening here? What happens is from the moment that Jacob sets eyes on Rachel, when he's coming from Beersheba, and he sets eyes on Rachel, and it's the first time that the Torah talks about falling in love. That is the initial seed that is going to wind up with Joseph and the story of Joseph and his brothers. And that whole progression starts off with his falling in love with Rachel. If you think about it, how powerful a piece of literature it is. But here you can see just allusions to the reinforcement of building up that situation, which we know is going to start playing out, as a matter of fact, in next week's Parsha. So let's keep going. Vahu avar lifnehem, and but he passed before them. He went out in front. He led them. Vayishtachu arza sheva ha'amim, and he prostrated himself on the ground, or he bowed to the ground 7 times, ad gishto adechav, until he reached his brother. So clearly here, he is doing, so in this sentence, right, we have both his strategizing, right, and his submission, to his appeasement, his attempt to appease his brother, and to show his brother just the opposite of what his brother thought of him to begin with. Avar lifnehem, he passed before them. Amar, and here we have to say, it means, again, as in many, many times, the word Amar doesn't mean to say, it means to think, right? Im yavo oto rasha lehilachem, if that wicked one comes to battle, ilachem bi tchila, let him battle against me to begin with. Again, I believe, showing the great signs of leadership and courage. We are seeing such a different Jacob at this point, right? He really is Yisrael here. And this is nobility. This is a sense of nobility. Vayarotz echsav likrato. Esau ran, larutz is to ran. Esau ran to greet him. Vayichabkehu, and he hugged him. Vayipol al tzavarav, and he fell on his neck. Vayishakehu, and he kissed him. Vayivku, and they wept. Obviously, because emotionally, this had to be an overwhelming moment. And you notice, of course, that there are these dots that appear on top of the letters of this word. And there are various times where dots appear in the Sefer Torah itself, on the Torah scroll. You see these dots on the letter and on letters. And basically, it's like an indication that word needs to be interpreted, that there's additional layers of meaning to that word because of those dots. Maybe it's in a way like quotation marks. And what's really interesting is how various authorities interpret it differently. So,
Rabbi, I would like to find out why Jacob gave gifts to Esau when he was coming. He gave him cattle, he gave him donkeys, he gave him everything to appease Esau.
correct. So, did you answer your question?
I don't know why he did that. I don't know. Maybe he was afraid that he would appease Esau that way. But I don't know if Esau was appeased.
Well, we'll find out because Esau's going to make a reference to it. Okay. So yes. Okay. So the answer is yes. Jacob was obviously doing everything to appease his brother. He's come 180 degrees. So yes, he was trying to do whatever he could to appease his brother. So, Vayichabkehu, he hugged him. Remember, who's this falling on? It's falling on Esau. Esau hugged him. And Rashi explains, Nitgalgalu Rachamav, his compassion, that is Esau's compassion, prevailed. Shera'ahu mishtachaveh, kol hashtachava kaviot halalu. So because he saw him prostrating himself, all these so many acts of prostration. So it just overwhelmed him with a sense of compassion. Here we go. Vaishakehu. He kissed him. This is the word, right? That has the dots. Nakud alav. There are dots on this word. Veyesh cholkin badavar hazeh. And there are those who disagree. There's a matter of opinion, different opinions regarding this particular feature. Baraita de Sifrei. In a Baraita, that means a very early source, contemporaneous with the Mishnah. And the Mishnah was edited in the year 200. So something that comes from before the year 200. There are these sources. And one of those sources is the Sifrei, and you may already be familiar because when we were studying Numbers and Deuteronomy, the Sifrei is in fact a a midrash. It's called a halachic midrash because it analyzes the laws that are found in Numbers and Deuteronomy, besides other matters. But sometimes it goes into what is called agadata, which would be the literary analysis. So in this particular baraita, in the Sifrei, yesh shedarshu nikuda zo. There are those who interpret this pointing, lomar, to say shelo nashko bechol libo, to say that even though he was kissing him, it wasn't really sincere. That's what they're saying. That's how they understand the dot, to mean that he wasn't sincere. Esau was not sincere when he kissed Jacob. So, and apparently this is also in Bereshit Rabbah that appears. That's the reference there. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, said Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, that is the rabbi who is the great mystic, right? There's stories about him and his son and their amazing understanding of mysticism. Halacha hi biyadua, okay? He says it's a principle that one can be certain of. So Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, this mystic, says it is of certainty she'esa soneh leYaakov, that there's no question, he says, that Esau hates Jacob, or he is a hater of Jacob. Ella, however, nichmaru rachamav, he felt compassion bo'ota sha'a, at that particular moment, benashko bechol libo, and in fact, he kissed him full-heartedly. So you've got some rabbis who say it wasn't a sincere embrace or sincere kiss, and Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai who says no, there's no question. We're not arguing over whether or not Esau loved Jacob, but the truth is that at that particular moment it was a sincere kiss. I will tell you that in Bereshit Rabbah there are also interpretations that take this vaYinashkehu and vaYishakehu to mean that to try and understand it. There's the word nashak, which means to kiss, and there's the word nashach with a chaf, which means to bite. So there's an interpretation that talks about that, and that Jacob's neck became like ivory and was able to resist it. Going on. Vayisa et einav. So again, this is now Esau, right? The same expression. Vayisa et einav. He lifted up his eyes, or he glanced upward. Vayar et hanashim ve'et hayeladim. And he saw the women and the children. Vayomer mi elelach. And he said to him, that is, Esau said to Jacob, literally it means, who are these to you? In other words, possibly saying, what relationship do these women and children have to you? Vayomar, and again, Jacob's direct speech tells us so much about where his personality is these days, right? And Jacob said, Hayiladim asher chanan Elohim et avdecha. He says, the children which the Lord, or rather God, has graced your servant. So look at how he's referring to himself as Esau's servant, and again, how he talks about God's grace. There's not an iota, of entitlement, etc. So again, what I love about this particular story is just how we see character development taking place, and especially when you see it in direct speech and how people communicate. So, mi elelach, who are these to you? I want to make sure I said that correctly. Yeah, it's lach. It's a pausal form. He says, who are these? Esau says, who are these to you? Mi ele liyot shelcha. So I was, in a sense, trying to puzzle out exactly the point that Rashi is saying. So one can translate it as, who are these to be yours? In other words, how did you acquire these? And that would make sense. That would make sense in terms of how Jacob answers Esau by saying, God has graced me with them. So onwards. Vatigashna hashvachot hena v'yaldehem, and the handmaidens came forward. They came forward, they and their children, vatishtachavena, and they bowed down. So there's no Rashi on this. We'll go to the next one. Vatigash gam Leah v'yiladeha v'yishtachavu, and Leah and her children also drew near and bowed down. V'achar, and after that, Nigash Yosef Rachel, and after that, Joseph and Rachel came forward, v'yishtachavu, and they also bowed down. They bowed down. And of course, you notice something about this, how this order changes a little bit. So let's go on. So Rashi picks that up right away. Nigash Yosef Rachel, Joseph and Rachel came forward. Bekulan ha'imaot, with regards to all the mothers, the matriarchs, Bechulan ha'imahot nigashot lifnei habanim. He says, with all of them, the mothers came forward before the children, before the sons. Aval berachel, but with regards to Rachel, Yosef nigash lefaneha. Joseph drew near to begin with, in front of her. Amar, again, he thought, Imi yefat Torah, my mother is a beautiful, beautiful woman. Shema yitle ba'einav or Torah asha. It's possible that wicked person will cast his eyes on her. Emod kenegda, let me stand opposite her. Ve'iakvenu milehistakel ba, and I will prevent him from looking at her, from peering at her. Mikan, and because of this, Zacha Yosef livracha, Joseph merited a blessing, ale ayin, by a spring. That's the wording. Ale ayin has to do with the blessing with which Jacob blessed his children, right? In the very last section of Genesis, we read about Jacob's blessing of his children, and he refers to Joseph as a ben porat, a fruitful vine, and growing by a spring. In other words, always having water, always being able to be nourished by the water. All right. Let's see what else we have here. Let's keep going a little bit more. Okay. Vayomer mi lacha kol hamachaneh hazeh. So again, Esau is inquiring of Jacob these, the details regarding his party, right? And he said, Esau, mi lacha, right? How did this happen? Kol hamachaneh hazeh, this entire encampment, this camp, asher pagashti, which I met. So the machaneh here is not referring to the camp that Jacob is in now. Rashi's going to tell you. So in other words, he's actually referring to the messengers that Jacob sent ahead with these gifts. Vayomer, and so he said, that is Jacob said, Nimtzo chen be'enei Adoni, in order to find favor in my Lord's eyes. So again, the idea of appeasement. Let's take a look at what's going on here. Down here. Milacha kol hamachaneh. How is this, or how did you acquire, or why? It's not that easy to translate right here, right? All this camp. Me calls, so Rashi tries to take this again. The reason Rashi's commenting is because this is not easy stuff to understand. Right? Me kol hamachaneh, who is all this camp asher pagashti, which I met, shehi shelcha, that it's yours. In other words, again, where did you get all these things that you sent to me? Klomar lama hu lacha, and Rashi says, interprets it as saying, why do you have this? How did you get this? On what account do you have this? Upshuto shel mikra, and the simple meaning of the scripture is of the verse al molichei hamachaneh, that it's actually referring to those who brought the gift hamincha. Excuse me, molichei hamincha. He's referring to those who brought. I transposed the nun and the chet on those who brought the gift. Umidrasho, and there is a midrash associated with this. In other words, the way he's asking this question is somewhat perplexing, right? Umidrasho. So there's a midrash about this. Kitot shel malachim. There were groups of angels. Paga. He encountered, that is Esau, encountered groups of angels, shayu dochafim oto, that were shoving him, the et anashav, and his party, his people. So these angels were shoving him and his party, the omrim lahem shelmi ata atem, and saying to them, these angels were saying to them, who do you belong to? Who are you? Who do you, as I said, who do you belong to? Or who are you? Vehem omrim lahem, and these people say to them, Shel Esav. They said, we're from Esau. We're Esau's men. Vehem omrim, and the angels were saying, Haku, Haku, and they were saying, strike, strike. In other words, they were beating these people. Ve'elu omrim, hanichu bnei shel Yitzchak. And these people were saying, no, leave alone, leave the children of Isaac alone. In other words, giving them a different yichus, right? Hanichu, comma, forgive me. Beno shel Yitzchak hu, he says, he is the son, that is Esau, is the son of Isaac. V'lo hayu mashkichim alav, but they didn't pay attention to him. Ben beno shel Avraham hu. Then they said, oh, he's the grandson of Abraham. V'lo hayu mashkichim alav. And they didn't pay any attention to what he said. It didn't make any difference. Echav shel Yaakov hu. Then they said, he's the brother of Jacob. Omrim lahem. And they said to them, Im kain mishalanu atem. He said, if that's the case, then you're part of our group. Now, I have to confess that I'm a little confused as to who's saying to what. Hold on one second. Give me a moment. I'm going to pause this. One moment. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let me just stop. I'm going to stop the share here and give me a moment here. And I'm going to pause the recording. 1 second.